Yeah, and well, Gerard, I wanted you to first comment on what happened across the border in Kenya. Ruto's cabinet, a very, very lean cabinet of 21 ministers, and it has been also another matter of discussion here in Uganda. Some comparing to Kenya and Uganda. By size, Kenya is almost 3 times Uganda, and look at this lean cabinet. But as I dug into the archives, in Kenya, the president is bound by an article in the constitution to only name a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 22 cabinet secretaries. I think for them it is already embedded in their laws. Maybe he didn't have any other choice. What do you think?
Actually, even in our laws there is a limit, but then there is a clause again which opens up.
Okay.
And then it says the president may appoint any other person to help him in the execution of his mandate.
Okay.
So this has given a leeway to the president to appoint a cabinet of 80.
Yeah.
And what is more disappointing is that according to the Commonwealth parliamentary rules, the MPs are not supposed to be ministers. And this is what is happening in Kenya. So you're supposed to appoint people outside the parliament, so that parliament retains its critical role of checking the executive. But in Uganda, you may find that out of 7 of them probably are members of parliament.
Yeah.
So they are divided between the divided loyalty, whether to be loyal to the people who elected them or to the president who appointed them ministers. And there is a culture we have adopted. When someone is appointed a minister, then you see a headline, Apollo eats big. It's like you have not been given responsibility, but you have been given
it's time to eat.
To eat. So it makes it appear like when we get these offices, we're just going to eat, but not to go to do to do what we're supposed to do. So I thank them because the bigger the cabinet, the higher the cost on the taxpayer, because you have to buy all these government vehicles, escorts. You know, I've been coming from home using the northern bypass, but everywhere I pass, you see, it's a Saturday, but the cars with the sirens are chasing you from the road. So I think it's something that we can learn. First of all, if you go to ministries, we have commissioners, directors, permanent secretaries. So these directors who head various departments. Why would you need maybe 4 ministers of health? Why would you need 4 ministers in finance? So I think it's something we can learn from. But I think sometimes, because I have told that people take appointment to ministries as eating, so maybe it is also used to cool some regions, and region can.
But Gerard, Kenya has also a diverse. I mean, it's also divided. You see a country that is divided both on ethnic lines and political lines. You would imagine and suspect that possibly it should be much more worse than what we have here. It
is because the Kenyans do their politics. They don't fear to call themselves communities, and therefore they think that if you win your community, then you have a higher bargaining power. In Uganda, we have a tribalism or ethnicity, only that we wrap it in a black cavera. We pretend. But when you go to public service, I will give an example. There's a time when prisons was full of my neighbors, Iteso. Almost everybody, the time of Mr. Etima. So we actually thought that the job of being a prisons officer belonged to
Anatitos.
to Iteso. We have also seen some departments. I don't know. There's a time all DPCs, all junior police officers, newly commissioned, were looking alike.
And then we thought that all cadets
hear-
must come from Chisoro.
I hear in the Air Force there is a group of people who also dominate the Air Force.
Exactly. So there's a time when I thought that to be a assistant superintendent of police, you must be from Chisoro. And everywhere you would pass, people look alike. So it happens, only that we are not open about it.
Okay.
It is true.
So what is in Kenya is it possible here, and are there merits to attached to such an arrangement? Because for them it is in the constitution, and it has been working. It has been the practice.
Now, for me, what I would do, the practice about appointment of ministers, I think something we can learn from. We don't need 90 ministers, for God's sake. Yes.
There are 80. We are around 80. Viewers, I think I have to introduce the usual suspect, Richard Bakuma Tinkasimire, a communication specialist. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Apollo. Good morning, viewers. Of course, always a pleasure and a privilege to be here, to be before you. And I thank God for the gifts of life and the ability to speak. And I found you at a very interesting place. About cadet officers or something, ASPs. Looking alike, but it's great to be here.
All right.
I think there is also some sectarianism, quote unquote, in selecting panelists.
Okay.
Because otherwise, what is the criteria? Well, I'm joking.
Yes, Richard, let's go straight to Ruto's cabinet. We were seeking a comment from you panelists to tell us what you think about this lean cabinet in Kenya, when actually we, the immediate neighbors, have a bloated cabinet. What does it sound to you like, Richard?
I think I think first of all, I think we give too much. We place too much faith in a cabinet. I think.
Here.
What do cabinet ministers do, or state ministers? What really?
They are political heads.
Yeah. So really, so political head. I'm not even sure what that means. What does a political head do? So I think for me, I personally, I pay more attention to permanent secretaries than ministers. I think there are many ministers who really probably go to their offices and have nothing much they can do, depending on the leadership that exists. Now, in my view, the factors that influence the selection of a cabinet in a place are the political objectives of the one who has power, the levers of power, and the realities. So it's using an interesting foundation or baseline to even attempt to compare the size of Uganda's cabinet and that of Kenya at current times. The baseline objectives of the leaders for selecting their cabinets are so diversely different that even attempting to compare them is a difficult and futile exercise. I was looking at the Kenyan selection of the cabinet. It really is about loyalty.
Loyalty.
In my view, the most important factor was loyalty.
Not
who was loyal?
Not service delivery.
What do this? What service delivery? So that's why I said we place too much, in my view, faith in the cabinet. I think it was rewarding loyalty. That's my view. I think it's the people who took political risks, high political risks.
Why is it not rewarding loyalty?
Yeah, And no, in Uganda, not necessarily. In fact, if you look at many of the people in the cabinet, it is because they were disloyal that they were brought on board.
In Uganda?
Yes, it is actually, it is co-option and mobilization for them to come on board. They were opposing and they got cabinet positions or came near. That is why. So it's different.
You bring another dimension to the debate, because we were looking at the size, and now you bring in, of course, which is obvious. You bring in a matter of quality and service.
Yeah, but you see, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, you see, the reasons we use, in my view, we use a wrong baseline for assessing why the size of a cabinet, why the people who are in the cabinet.
Does it matter?
Because for us, we start from service delivery, quality. I don't even know what quality means. If somebody qualifies to be an MP, are they not qualitative? So why would they be in parliament and not be in cabinet? Some people have been thrown out, we know, but not for quality reasons, but for political machinations and maneuver, which is what cabinet is about. It's about politics and maneuvering. So for me, the Kenyan one, I think, has been about rewarding the loyalty. That they were the individuals who took very high risk and stood with the principal, President Ruto, because the risks were really, really high. In their constituencies, there was a high likelihood that this guy was going to lose. He was against an entire establishment. They suffered. They suffered. Their businesses. They were curtailed. They were shunned by a lot of their colleagues and friends. So they stood by the principle, and they have benefited.
Do you think, Richard, the discussion about trimming the cabinet in Uganda is valid at this point in time?
Valid according to what baseline?
Is it necessary?
I keep going back to my baseline.
Yeah.
You see, if you want to stay in power as long as for decades or beyond, you have to do certain things.
Okay.
One of them is to give people opportunity to share
Resources
on the cake, even when they are sharing some residue, but they should be able to share. The second thing is to give the people from different areas, the facade, at least, that they are also sharing on the cake, because one of them is around the perceived table. The other one is that this should be visible. You see, when you have these ministers, then people know that some of them, their friends, cronies, cousins, will also get either work, jobs, will either get into boards, will get into, and then that's how you win over those places. And therefore, you have no choice but to make them so many. That is why you have many governance levels where people can tap from. Parliament, 600-700 people, I don't know how many.
529.
Districts, you have to break them up, because then you have district chairmen, district councillors, sub-county councillors, and the technocrats also. Then many of the technocrats will also get jobs, cow and an assistant and the production officer and So this access to some public resource minimizes the possibility of things boiling internally to challenge your position.
Okay, in our context, is the common man benefiting from this arrangement?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, because my person is a little bit closer to the table, I have a higher chance of getting something from the councillor in my sub-county. Me being a councillor, I will be a councillor anyway, and get an allowance from there or influence a decision. Or I will be a district chairman.
Seedlings.
Or I will, the seedlings will come, or so that I have a higher chance. Two, the minister is from my place, so I am a PhD Wanzara. I really am getting towards retirement. I have a higher chance of being on a board somewhere, or getting a recommendation for a contract. So yes, in that way. Yeah, so the common man, quote unquote, whoever that is, has a chance of benefiting from this. Now, as a collective, there is a loss because of the extremely high hemorrhage of resources on public administration and the attendant costs. So yes and no.
Yes and no. Back to you, Gerard, Dr. Gerard. His answer is not specific. It's a yes and no. Do you think this discussion is really necessary in Uganda today?
I think he's a very moderate person, but his point comes out clearly. If you look at Uganda, we have about 2 million elected leaders. So it speaks something. And then you go to the villages, there are those you don't feel at national level, but they are very active there. Why? Because by the virtue of the fact that they are in some positions, when say planting materials come like seeds, they are the first to get, and they are comfortable. Then I would also say, when we were under Mbale district, the old Mbale district, a lot of feeder roads were opened, okay? They opened very clearly, and they were being maintained. Now, when we split to create a Manafa, we created a Misimba, we created a Vududa, some of those roads have become foot pathways. Why? Because the resources that would go to that road are being used to facilitate the administrative units. So what he means is that it's a yes and no, because there are those who will enjoy some crumbs of power. So and so, if Minister Cheptoris is from Kapchorwa, is the only minister there, maybe will influence some people to get jobs here and there. And
but in the end, Gerard and Richard, can't we have a mechanism of evaluating the general benefit from such an arrangement, and say yes, we can adopt it?
Of course, there are those,
and say no, it is time we do something else, because we now can see efforts of towards merging MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies of government. I think that is in the same direction of cutting on the high cost of the high administrative costs.
I gave you an example that today when I was coming to these studios, I found about 3 cars at different intervals, different times, each with an escort and soldiers and a siren. So, if you have, say, 90 ministers, and each minister has a UG and an escort car and probably 6 police officers, the police officers who are escorting have allowances, okay? The extra car is taking fuel, and was also purchased using money. So at the end of the day, you can see that the cost actually more than triples.
I think
so the ideal situation would be having probably a small cabinet, then we leave the departments. Directorates will be headed by commissioners, directors, because actually those are the people who do the real work. We have seen ministries where people clash for allowances. I'm going to open mobile halls, and my friend is traveling, me, I'm not traveling. So at the end of the day, it creates a very high cost and doesn't benefit the taxpayer.
Richard alluded to the fact that this could be linked to longevity in power. Do you agree?
Partly. If you look at the president's cabinet in the late 80s and then the 90s, the size is not the same as now. You must have someone from Chisoro, you must have every tribe who has to feel represented, and then to create some kind of stability. Like I told you, in our society, people believe that if you give the person a ministerial position, then they have eaten. That's why you see in our headlines are always that Prince Apollo eats big. They don't say you have been given responsibility. So it's about eating, and that's the perception also the leaders have. That you have been. I've looked at countries where a person, now look at the UK, it has been having an economic crisis. When they appoint you, the chancellor of the exchequer, like Kwarteng, he has a very big job every day. People are on his case, he has to deliver. But here people are relaxed.
Okay.
Someone will cause a loss of 20 billion and he's laughing before a committee of parliament. I signed without looking through the papers. I thought my officers had looked through. And the next day he's still in office.
Well, one word from Richard as we conclude this topic.
Yeah, but you see, we are probably concluding it too quickly, but that's okay. That's your prerogative, Apollo. but you see, Apollo.
We can give it time because it's important.
Yeah, because you see, the classroom, the classroom size of a cabinet, and I'm talking about a UPE classroom. Our cabinet is like a UPE class. That's how big it is. And you want to deliberate. Really? I mean, how will
You're talking about that Monday cabinet meeting.
How will they deliberate?
How it looks like.
Yeah.
It's a rally.
So, and then, so first of all, when
actually they say along Entebbe Road in the morning there's always jam.
Because if you talk about service rush, delivery,
rush to,
you have actually service contradiction because you have too many people trying to do the same thing. So you actually have service impediment.
Okay.
It's not just lack of delivery, but it also impedes who goes where, who quarrels with what, and you're managing that.
We have actually experienced incidents where some ministries, actually ministers, their roles being overlapping and some clash. I mean, overlapping of mandates.
Yeah.
And that tells about duplication of
and you
roles.
See, and you see, Apollo, it does not start in the public. By the time it comes out in the public, it means it has been brewing. So imagine how much service loss and impediment we have occasioned. So that's one. He talked about the cost. You see, people don't know that when you're a minister, you have a car for yourself, you have a car for home. It's part of your entitlements. So it's just this one day, and it's, no one gets a cheap car.
Yeah.
No, it's so there are fuel guzzlers, there are drivers, there are everything. But also now, what Dr. Wanzara was talking about, that there were 3 ministers, each one with a car. There has been privatization. No, there has been personalization of security, I think, in this country. So ministers have vehicles in front of them, but every other high-ranking or a very close, loved one or something of a high-ranking, certain individuals will have those multiple security layers around them, including vehicles. So there has been increasing personalization of security in the country, that if state minister needs a car in front of them, a minister needs a car, a commander of this, head of an agency, a head of a government agency, parastatal, they also have all of them cars in front of them, everyone, prisons, what? And that tells you that there is a privatization at a personal level of security.
Okay.
It tells you that there is actually a breakdown of security generally. It is not, it is a reflection that there is a breakdown, and so everyone is looking at themselves now and how secure they are. Then you can manage or handle yourselves. And that's extremely dangerous. I don't know if people see how dangerous it is to them by these officials looking more and more inward and only personalizing and privatizing their security using public resources. So that's an interesting, really, aspect that we need to look at. And so the bigger the cabinet, with all these other attendant the privileges and benefits, with the breakdown of security so that it has to be personal and private, the cost becomes huge. And obviously, it's the ordinary individual, usual taxpayer that misses. But the opportunity cost, Apollo, is that you are taking away resources. First of all, you are burdening the taxpayer, overburdening an already burdened taxpayer. But you're also diverting what this overburdened taxpayer is paying to individual and personalized benefits and privileges.
Exactly. Doctor, I think now we agree that now we can understand where this huge public debt arises from, where it comes from, that we have today, and dismal service delivery the services that we get. I think the cost of public administration is an issue that must be attended to, and it's very urgent.
It is very true. A few years back, we were, of course, what we do, monitoring parliament.
Our parliament is
We used to go there.
The size is growing every.
Yeah, we used to
every
go
other
there,
election
and
term.
you'd find that walkway around the parliament was always free. People are walking, but nowadays when you go on the day the parliament is sitting, you see security cars all around there, that stretch, and with mean-looking people. That's all costs to the taxpayer. And then when you go to local governments, decentralization was good, but it has failed. Why? Because politics went on over, and the love for money went on overriding the real purpose of decentralization. So you have districts that do not generate any revenue internally, highly dependent on the central government, and then they are not viable. And then you find that the human resource recruitment placement is at less than 50%. So jobs are vacant, they are not resourced to be able to deliver services. They even don't have, like I was telling you, the town councils in my place, those that were started 2-3 years ago, this year they received startup funds to operationalize those town councils. But a whole year they received about 50 million. The new sub-county 30 million. What services can 30 million deliver in a sub-county? So when such monies arrive on the account, the town clerk will see it, renovate some building, and then the balance is shared. They go and drink beer in town.
So, Richard, as we wind up, because we need to move on. When we were starting the show, I talked about an article in the Kenya's constitution that limits, that brings a cap to the number of cabinet secretaries, they call cabinet secretaries, to only maximum of 22. And Gerard reminded me that even in our constitution we have it, but there is another clause that somehow gives leeway to the authority to expand and make it much bigger. Do you think we should possibly recommend an amendment to that, to bring a cap?
No, I think it would be an exercise in futility. Yeah, we had constitutional provisions on term limits.
Yeah, true.
When there were impediments to our objectives, we torpedoed them. We had constitutional provisions on age limit.
Yeah, true.
When they became impediments to our objectives, we torpedoed them. So what would this one be?
No, I like
this one of numbers.
I like the your objectives.
Yes.
Your objectives.
Yeah. We torpedoed them. Now, if this one is also contrary to our objective, we shall torpedo it. But there was another way that didn't need to go all the way, but it would also be like the others.
Yeah.
So don't bother with the constitution. You're a mere piece of paper.
Okay. All right, viewers, this is The Dialogue. My name is Tusima Apollo. I call myself Prince Apollo. And we have Richard Baguma, the communication specialist, and we have Dr. Gerard Wanzara, the head of head of research and civic engagement at Africa Leadership Institute, looking at issues that made those headlines in the week.